Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night workshop. I hope that your year has been going well. We're almost halfway done, or more than halfway done with January. Tonight's topic, the Wednesday night workshop topic, is grounds for understanding. Actually love this idea, the thought about understanding. A quote that I came up with, or I discovered, was Gandhi's quote. He said that, I want to make sure I do this correctly, anger and intolerance are the enemies of correct understanding, which I find that to be true. When there's misunderstanding, oftentimes we get angry and we're intolerant and impatient of individuals who don't see our point of view or who set us off, let's say. When I think about the concept of understanding, it makes me laugh because sometimes when you have people who say, "Do you understand?" And if you say yes, I get the idea that sometimes what they're wanting to do is say, "Do you understand?" mean, "Do you agree with me?" Because there's been times when I've understood what an individual was saying and still disagreed with them, and their comment was, "Well, you don't understand." Which is funny, because we can misinterpret the idea that understanding means agreement, which it doesn't. Understanding means something entirely different. To understand, to have comprehension, it's not just awareness, it's having the expansion is the word that I want to go with. When we seek understanding, what we're really looking for is an expansion of our awareness. Obviously, we're learning something greater or in addition to what we already know. That's what understanding would be, a part of it. It's also, I guess, being on the same wavelength, if I could use that terminology, to be able to understand an individual. Sometimes couples have a mutual understanding. They could be out at an event and give each other the look or a smile, and you know immediately that's how they're feeling. So there's an unspoken understanding developed between relationships. Parents and children have that easy understanding, send a disapproval look to your son who's throwing their food and they know they're in trouble. So we can have nonverbal understanding as well as verbal understandings. When it comes to the idea of understanding, it also has to go with comprehending. Naturally, I want to be able to understand what the audience is, or perhaps whoever's listening to me, my husband, my wife, my child, cousins, family members, so on and so forth. When we're searching for communication, that's what understanding, effective communication, it means you understand. Effective listening, naturally, it means you're paying attention to and making an attempt to understand the other individual's point of view. But I want to give you a very simple illustration of understanding. Very, very simple, and how understanding can be turned into misunderstanding. In the classroom, we use a little bit of an illustration, so I'm going to attempt to do the same thing, but with a different picture. Let's say you have two people, and they're in a house. Now, one person is standing looking out the window. The second person is standing looking in the center of the room. So their back is to the window, and the first person's back is to the center of the room. Now, if you were to ask the individual who's looking out the window to describe what they see, naturally they would be able to describe the trees and the flowers and the grass and the birds, perhaps the children playing outside, the cars that are going by on the street. They can determine the day, approximately what time of day it is, the season that it's at, the color of the flowers. They can continue on with the outside world. Now, if you were to turn to the person who is facing the center of the room and ask that individual to describe what they see, they would be able to build a picture of the warmth of the room. They could tell you about the wooden floor that they're standing on, the color of the couch and the love seat, perhaps an area rug, the paint on the walls, paintings perhaps that are on the walls, the lighting fixtures, window coverings, knickknacks, and family photos that are strewn about. An entirely different picture than the one who's looking out the window. Now, when we look at these two people and we say to them to describe what they see, naturally we get from their point of view. This is so important for us to understand. When I look out at the world, I'm looking with my point of view. We have a tendency to perceive that our point of view is the only point of view, and that makes us right. So when this person is looking into the center of the room, talking about their point of view, from their point of view, they are right. When the person who's looking out the window describes a tree, this person doesn't see a tree, so naturally that person's wrong. Well, from my point of view, I don't see a tree, so obviously you're wrong. And it makes sense to determine I am right, you are wrong. If this person who's looking out the window is describing the tree and the one who's looking in the room describes a couch, looking out, I don't see a couch. So from this point of view, you are wrong and I am correct. Once again, because I'm looking from my point of view. This is so important for us to understand, to have understanding. Perception is connected to understanding. My point of view, what I perceive. If I wish to have understanding of each one of these individuals, what's required naturally would be for me to turn and face the other direction. So if the person who is looking into the room decides to turn and look outside the window, their point of view has now expanded. They see, oh, there is a window and there is the room. The same if the other individual turns around as well. What's happened here in this very simple illustration is if I'm looking out the window and I turn, so my point of view is this way, and I turn, I am now literally expanding my point of view. I can now embrace the outside as well as the inside of the room. That's expansion. That gives me understanding. When I turn to face the other person's point of view, I can now embrace them because I say, oh yes, I see. There is a couch there. There is a wooden floor. Now I know this sounds so simple and I'm being very metaphorical to paint a picture, but really, that's what it comes down to. The basis of understanding is about expansion. Being able to expand and realize that there is another point of view. Now, what happens in this illustration, this is very easy. We get stuck because we say this is the only way, and I refuse to look at that way. Why should I have to look? They should look. Why do I have to embrace them? They should embrace me. Well, when you have a very fixed position, a very fixed point of view, if you're not willing to embrace the opposite side, there isn't going to be an understanding. Now, that's one part. I'm sure you all understand that. We also have the idea of attachments, quick to judge. It's as if, let's say, like if you walk in the middle of a movie, if you were to walk into a movie theater and see the middle of the movie and not knowing anything that's going on, you'll be lost, first of all. And then all we can do is just judge quickly what's going on and make our assumptions. Just recently, my husband and I, we just went and saw The Upside, which I would recommend. It was a very good movie. Kevin Hart, Bryan Cranston, Nicole Kidman. Let's say you happen to walk into the movie just as, what's a good example just as he's yelling and screaming. I don't want to give away too much of a plot, but you've got one person who's angry, another person who's smashing pots. You might assume that Kevin Hart is destroying the gentleman's house, because Kevin Hart is walking around smashing and crashing things. But if you were to rewind just a little bit, you would recognize that Kevin Hart was doing this on behalf of Bryan Cranston. They were working together. But we jump to conclusions when we only know part of the story. It's very easy to jump to conclusions. Unfortunately, I have to add this. I mean, recently in the news, we have the illustration, the racial comment that was made, and everyone screams and yells, "Roar, roar, roar." But when you look at the whole picture, you recognize, oh, that person was being tormented and attacked and bullied, and that was their reaction. So when we just see a little snippet and we jump, we cause intolerance and anger, which is exactly what Gandhi said. So unfortunately, and fortunately, this week in the media, we've had that happen. And perhaps now, and the reason why I said fortunately, is because perhaps now people might stop before they jump to a conclusion. Maybe they might stop and think, okay, is this the whole picture? Because that's really what you want to do, is look at the whole picture. I remember one time I did this illustration where I had a photograph and I zoomed in real close, and all you saw was a mother tugging her child, her toddler, very aggressively. And if all you saw was that, you would naturally assume that the mother was abusive. Oh, abusive, abusive, and react to that. But then if you zoomed out a little bit more, you would realize the toddler was about to step off the curb into oncoming traffic. When we understand that, then we see, oh, she's not being abusive, she's being protective. I know that sounds like a very simple concept, but that's really what happens. When we react without thinking, we're judgmental. And we're coming from our position. And it's right and that's wrong. And we judge accordingly. Now, I've had some conversations in the past, most recently in the past, is the idea that with social media so present in today's society, we react so quickly, and the days of research and understanding have long been gone. Most people don't do a lot of research to find out what's happening and where does this go and how did that occur. Now, I'm not suggesting that for every conversation you analyze and adjust and look for the whole picture, but we also have to not be so quick to jump to conclusions. What we really want to do is to have a basis of understanding. Too often we have a tendency to see only our point of view. So again, if I'm looking to expand my point of view, there are several steps that I must take. Now, in Omega Vector, we always talk about the idea of personal growth. When I can expand, have personal growth, I become a better human being. Personal growth means I become to expand my, not personal, inner growth, my inner growth, expand my capacity. George was probably one of the most compassionate individuals I've ever met on the planet. He had the unique ability to, whoever stood before him felt like they were his best friend. He had the ability to love and understand every person who stood in front of him. He did not judge. If he saw a homeless man, he didn't immediately say, oh, there's someone who quit, or an alcoholic, or there's a drug addict. That wasn't George. If we could remove our judgments, it would be very easy for us to be able to understand one another. I remember, I know I've said this before, but when I was in high school, I remember back in the day, the Cold War, Geraldo Rivera had his own TV show, and he connected with satellites a classroom of high school students in America to a classroom of high school students in Russia, and opened the dialogue between the two kids, the two classrooms. And what unfolded was both kids from both classrooms had the same questions. Well, why do you hate us? Well, we don't hate you. Why do you hate us? Well, we don't hate you. And what they discovered was their commonalities were far outweighed their differences. All of that was possible through communication. Again, that's going to go back to where I mentioned earlier. For understanding, it's effective communication. In order for me to have an accurate depth of understanding, I must be able to communicate and understand or assess, observe on whether or not the person I'm speaking to has a clear understanding of what I'm saying. So, I want to just I came up with a list of 6 different things that we can do to ensure that we have an understanding, to practice the art of understanding. Obviously, communication is the first one. I didn't even put that on there. But the first one I said was to recognize that I have a point of view. And since I'm looking at the world from my point of view, I'm biased to my point of view. Every human being is. My point of view is the way I see world. So if I'm looking this way, it's my point of view. If I'm looking this way, that's now my point of view. You understand that. So points of view. I am biased to my point of view, meaning I favor my point of view. Naturally, I'm going to favor my point of view. Add arrogance to that, and it's going to be quite difficult to be able to see someone else's point of view. So that's something to work on. So that's the first thing. Recognize that I have a point of view. The second thing is I have to recognize that everyone else has their own point of view, and they are equally biased to their points of view. Now this is a big, if we can understand this, you're halfway there. Knowing that I have a point of view and you have a point of view, and we don't have to fight to be right, because just like the person who is looking at the couch and the person who is looking at the tree, from their points of view, they are right. So if we can eliminate the terminology of right and wrong and just insert instead perspective. From my perspective, this is what I see. From your perspective, this is what you see. When I remove judgment, I've gotten the idea of understanding. There is no right or wrong. It's all perspective. So that's the first thing. Second thing, excuse me. I have a point of view and I'm biased to my point of view. You have a point of view and you're biased to your point of view. Now, if I want to begin to expand, I must relinquish the attachment to my point of view. I'll say that again. If I wish to expand, I must release the attachment to my point of view. In other words, I recognize it's simply my point of view, but there could be another point of view. So mine isn't the right, it's not the only one, so I release the attachment I have to my point of view. An easy illustration. When I was growing up, I disliked broccoli beyond anything you could ever imagine. I would not eat, as a matter of fact, I didn't like vegetables. So that was my point of view. Now, if I held on to that, most people would probably laugh at that now because I'm a vegan now. I love vegetables, but back then I didn't. I released my point of view and embraced different cooking styles, different seasonings, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm gone to where I love vegetables. So I actually expanded my point of view on the topic of vegetables. I'd love to be able to do that for my son. Anyway, then, so I have to release my point of view. Then the number 4 thing is I observe that there's another point of view. Again, I'll go back to the couch and the tree. I release my point of view of the couch and I observe that, oh, that person sees a tree. So I'm not just looking at the couch, I can see a tree now. So I release this point and I observe that there's another point. That's number 4. Number 5, I come to a place of compassion. A place of compassion meaning that when I look and see this person's point of view from a tree and realize that that's where they're coming from and that's why they're taking the position they are, oh, okay, it's just like me taking the position for the couch. As strongly as I feel about the couch is as strong as they feel about the tree. Got it. I don't need to move them from there, so I'm very compassionate about the idea. You know, actually I might be moved that they're so passionate about their position. So I implement compassion. And then the final thing I have to remember is understanding takes time and patience. It takes time and patience. Now for this one, I'll say with the many people that I've worked with in the classroom, you have an event in your life that happens. Painful, causing you harm, let's say. It's an event in your past. You might have begrudgingness, judgment, upset, anger, disdain. It's like a thorn in your side. To be able to look at that event, now I'm an advocate, every event has value, we learn something from everything. So if I were to look at that event, not as a thorn, but recognize it's a step, I can learn something about myself. Now that's just the comprehension, but it's going to take some time for me to understand that. Because I have that reaction of, look what that person did to me. That's what I might say. Look what happened to me. If I can remove that and not see myself as a victim and recognize, oh, it was just an event. It requires time and it requires patience. I have to be patient with my understanding and acceptance of the event and the time. It's going to take some time to figure out, what is the value here? What did I learn? It may not come to us right away. Unfortunately, we live in a society where everything's happened. We got the internet at our fingertips, everything, information, instantaneous. So patience is wearing nowadays. But if we do implement patience in our lives, and if we can implement the time allotted for that, we would be able to release our particular point of view and begin to embrace it. Just a very simple illustration. It takes time for me to go from the couch to the tree. Simple illustration, but that makes the point. Time is required. I also have to be patient. Perhaps maybe when I turn and look at the tree, this person isn't willing to turn and look at mine. It doesn't matter. I still can be patient with them, recognizing that that's their point of view. I do not have to insist that they recognize my point of view just because I see their point of view. No. Wow, this is about my inner journey. I see the couch and the tree. I've now expanded. Maybe I can help them see the couch. Maybe they don't want to. Let go of that. I don't need to make anybody see the couch. Wants to see the tree, stay the tree, that's fine. So when I release my attachment, I'll release my agendas, my points of view, my biasness, then I find freedom. Let's say that I am interacting with an individual that doesn't want to see the couch. That's okay. I'm actually free to be able to see the tree and the couch, and I'm not stuck. I'm not stuck. This poor individual perhaps may be stuck because they absolutely refuse to see anything but the tree. Okay, there's nothing I can do about that. I cannot force this person to see the couch. I cannot shake them. I cannot pick them up and turn them around. That was completely inappropriate to do. What's required is acceptance. I accept that this individual sees the tree and refuses to see anything but the tree. But I don't need to let that prevent me from embracing the two opposite points of view. If it's about my expansion, and if it's about my understanding, and I'm the one who has that concept, then it's my responsibility to implement understanding. If I don't do that, I'm simply reacting to them, which solidifies my point of view. So again, the concept of understanding, if I could just boil it down to, it requires communication, it requires compassion, patience, and timing. Releasing my particular point of view awareness as well. I must observe and adjust are the things that I do as I travel along on my path in life. So thank you for joining me this evening to talk about understanding. I did want to remind you that the book of the month, this is it, good news. We're meeting this Sunday in Phoenix on Indian School and 18th Street, I think it is, or 20th Street at the Starbucks there to do our first book club. So I look forward to see you there. Very excited, and have a wonderful evening this evening. I will see you in 2 weeks for the Monday night workshop of February. Bye now.